be joining. So hello, and thank you everyone for joining us today for Workbar Live. My name is Chelsea Hildreth, the Events and Partnerships Manager at Workbar, and it's our pleasure to welcome Abigail Hueber, the founder of Above Health Nutrition. She will be presenting today on immune health for the body and mind. To start, just a little bit about the company and Abigail. Above Health Nutrition helps individuals reach their health and wellness goals. Abigail is an integrative health nutritionist. She received her graduate degree at Simmons College and studied under Dr. Tracy Harrison, a renowned functional medicine practitioner. Her company is located in the Back Bay area and offers both in-person, of course when we open back up, and virtual health counseling. Just a few notes for our guests. Yes, this is a webinar. So you'll only be able to see Abigail and I. She's going to be presenting some slides. After that, we'll open up for Q&A throughout the presentation, or at any point that you have a question, please just submit that via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And then we'll go through them and make sure everything is asked and answered. So thank you so much for joining us today, Abby. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and Above Health Nutrition and what prompted you to start this company before starting your presentation?
Yeah, so hi everyone, excited to be with you all today. Thanks, Chelsea. So my company is Above Health Nutrition, and I am an integrative functional dietitian, which essentially all of those words mean that I look for root cause and really look to heal root cause. So functional medicine is really about kind of healing from the foundation to really alleviate any of the issues symptoms maybe that we're experiencing, and certainly alleviate any kind of downstream trajectory that we might be headed towards if we don't kind of, support ourselves. I started my company, my private practice, probably about a little over 10 years ago. And I've always been interested in health and nutrition, really just a science nerd from the beginning, and really figured out that nutrition has so much to do with science, particularly with chemistry. That was my science of choice. That's really what kind of led me down kind of becoming a dietitian, and furthermore, a lot actually through my own personal experience. I like to say that I don't have a conventional body. And so my own kind of health journey led me to kind of discover functional medicine, which really looks at the individual and treats that individual based on, what they're presenting with, and how, we all are genetically very, very different. And we might have the same conditions as the person next to us, but the way that we support those might be tremendously different. So I was able to help myself, and then kind of, realize that a lot of other people would probably benefit from this as well. So I've pretty much been studying and learning since I finished the formal graduate program, which gave me my license as a dietitian, and kind of learning more about functional medicine. And anyone that is in the medicine field, especially functional medicine, it's really the more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn. So I'm a forever student, certainly.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I know I am very excited for your presentation, and I think it's going to be very, very helpful just having glanced at it. So if you want to get that started, and then you can tell us why immune health is so important.
Awesome. All right, just going to share my screen. Get this guy up and running.
There we go.
All right.
Perfect.
So again, my practice is Above Health Nutrition, and I really specialize in digestive health. And digestive health as it really relates to so many aspects of our overall health, certainly specializing and supporting kind of healing individuals with IBS and overt digestive conditions, the heartburns, the bloating, the constipation, all of those lovely and fun symptoms that we want to talk publicly about. But additionally, really connecting individuals to how much their kind of gut health impacts their skin, eczema, psoriasis, cystic acne, hormone balance. We certainly can think about autoimmune conditions having a huge impact on kind of the health of our digestive system. Pre-postnatal, we actually hand our gut health in a way, our microbiome, to our infants through, the birthing process and during kind of development. So there's a lot of aspects in my practice that I focus on, really from the lens of kind of digestive health. And so I'm going to share some of that with you today, because it is so much to do with our immune health. So when I think about immune health, and by the end of this presentation, I hope the way we think about immune health is really that it has to do so much with our holistic health. And holistic essentially just means whole, and really 360 degrees. So we think about, certainly the nutrients in the foods that we're eating. And that's probably what, for most of us, makes the most sense. We're like, okay, my immune system, the nutrients that I'm eating, the foods that I'm eating, there's got to be some connection to that. But additionally, what we're going to kind of get a little bit more into today is that our lifestyle, and particularly our routines, so important and paramount really in the unique situation that we're in now, because we're really relying on ourselves to give ourselves some structure and routine and bedtimes. And those have a lot to do with actually our immune health. And I'll help to connect the dots there. And, obviously with the current state of affairs, our stress and our mindfulness. Now, this is something to be mindful of at all points in our life. But really it does seem to be kind of forefront of the mind today. And it has a huge impact on our immune health as well. So really thinking about the question of what information are we feeding to our body? Because food, first and foremost, is information. Yes, it's got calories and macronutrients like the protein and the fat and the carbohydrates and all of those constituents that make up the food. But actually, it is speaking to our DNA and our genetic makeup and the way that our body kind of functions as a whole. And in addition to that, we can kind of even take that larger from just saying about food, but our lifestyle and our stress and mindfulness practices, those are information too. So really the question should be, when we kind of think about our holistic life, our holistic health, is what information are we feeding to ourselves? So as we go through this presentation today, really thinking of, all right, what's the information that I've been consuming in the past month? And has that been supporting or deterring me from really the most optimal health? Because that's really what we're looking for, not only just a robust immune system, but an optimal health that makes us vibrant and able to really take on the day and participate in the relationships and the amazing life that we have and that we have waiting for us, certainly. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's start with nutrients in food, because we got to eat, and we got to eat several times a day. So what should we be eating? All right, so there's a couple of nutrients that are really paramount when we think about immune health. And actually, a lot of these foods can be things that are in our pantry, or maybe even things that we're actually eating frequently ourselves. Before I get into the weeds on any of this, I do want to just kind of big picture back it up and really bring it down to whole kind of foods in their most innate form is really what we want to be eating. So if you don't remember anything else from this presentation, it all just like deletes out of your mind, I really just want you to take into account, okay, if I'm just really focusing on the predominant amount of things that I'm eating being whole, single ingredient foods in their most innate form. And what I mean by innate form, meaning if you were to picture yourself walking through a field, theoretically, I would like you to be able to trip over most of the foods that you are eating. So we could trip over a cow or some animal. We could trip over an almond. We could trip over a strawberry. Theoretically, we could trip over a blade of rice. So we probably couldn't trip over a donut. We probably couldn't trip over, lots of foods that are kind of in packages and things. And so when we really think about 80% of the foods that we're eating, trying to think of those foods as foods that would exist in this very unique field that grows all things, apparently. So that's really what we're aiming for. And that in and of itself will be abundantly supporting our holistic kind of immune health, and really helping for us to feel most vibrant, but additionally really helping to kind of keep us well and nourished and even protect us if we do get sick, because that is really the immune system that's doing that heavy lifting. So zinc is a really key immune nutrient. I know probably a lot of people, when kind of talking to clients and even friends and family, that's kind of one of the first ones I think that people, vitamin C and zinc are kind of one of the first ones that people are like, oh, I know those are immune nutrients and I'm going to, load up on those in supplements or things. And I'm a fan of supplements, and we're going to talk about that too, but we can get these through foods. So pumpkin seeds are a really great source, a great pantry staple, something that you could actually eat, just as is. They could be roasted or they could be raw. And those could be a great snack. You could also add those into salads or top them on soups as kind of like croutons and things like that. So zinc is actually helping to, it has a antiviral functions to it and actually helps to decrease the longevity of a cold or a flu or a virus. So once we are sick, it's actually really important to bring that on, really important mineral in the body. Oysters are a great source of zinc too. So, if you have some oysters lying around, meat, lentils.
We all do, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There actually is, an oyster delivery company that I've been seeing on Instagram that's kind of, talking about delivering oysters and caviar. And I want to be like, it's a very good immune food, actually. Good for all of us. So, thinking about, having these foods in rotation. So some animal proteins, if we eat animal proteins as, part of at least one meal a day would be great. Lentils and chickpeas are great pantry staples. Certainly thinking of, canned beans can be really wonderful. Dried, we really just need to soak them as kind of an additional step. But once we do it once, you realize, oh, it's not that huge of a barrier. I actually can do this. And a lot of times they have a lot more flavor. So we can really be kind of utilizing these foods, adding them into salads, adding them into, we could get creative. There's some great chickpea cookie dough recipes. If you have kids, throw them all into a blender. There's some nut butter in there. Surprisingly, I make it with, I actually write and teach a wellness curriculum in addition to running my private practice. And I make it with my students all the time. And they give me, quite the look when we begin the activity. And then once we're enjoying it, they're like, this is actually pretty good. Definitely some chocolate chips in there. So thinking about ways to incorporate these foods. Vitamin A is another. Vitamin A actually helps the turnover of our cells. So we think about that from everything from our skin cells, but also to the rejuvenation of the cells in our body, kind of in that healing modality. So animal proteins, pasture raised eggs. So we want those eggs, those chickens rather, to be pasture raised because they're going to actually be outside eating bugs and worms. And the bugs and the worms, those are where a lot of the nutrient dense aspects of what give those eggs or those meats what it is that we're really wanting from them. So pasture raised is one of those confusing terms that would be kind of at the pinnacle, the top, the cherry on top of what we're really wanting to. At this time, we're really looking for access to foods. So these are things of information that we might pick up, a couple months from now when things have calmed down and we can actually go to the grocery store with a clear mind. So, really right now we just want to think about foods in their most innate, and then we can get a little bit more esoteric as we get maybe back to a little bit less of a busyness in our mind. Dark leafy green vegetables, orange fruits and vegetables, all of those have vitamin A in them. Really important nutrient for our immune system. Vitamin C, this one we hear about a lot. Citrus foods, cauliflower is actually one of the highest vitamin C foods, as well as potatoes. So that's kind of a surprising, it actually has more vitamin C than an orange. So a great, and cauliflower is made out of, there's pizzas and breads and rice, everything's made out of cauliflower these days. So we can really be, recognizing that if those are things that we enjoy, this is a great way to actually get some really robust immune support from that vitamin C. Roast potatoes, sign me up. Really great, again, pantry staple, will stay on your counter or in a root drawer for ages. So great things to kind of load up on. So backing it up again, phytonutrients in food. So phytonutrients mean plant nutrients. So when we think of colorful fruits and vegetables, the saying, eat the rainbow, there's an incredible amount of science behind that. It sounds like a PBS statement, and it's the same exact thing I'll tell my fifth graders as I will tell my 45-year-old clients. And everybody understands it, which is the beauty of it. And you don't need to know the science in terms of, unless you're a nerd like me and you want to go down that rabbit hole, like jump on in. But really thinking of, okay, variety in color, variety in type. And I'm going to be getting these abundance of plant-based nutrients. In particular, one that highlights in really uniquely to the state of where we are now is quercetin. Quercetin is found highest in apples and onions, and it's an incredible anti-inflammatory, particularly in the respiratory system. So actually for anyone that has seasonal allergies, quercetin is going to be your kind of number one go-to. So load up on those apples, those onions. You can take it in a supplement form, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But that's really an anti-inflammatory and helping to kind of decrease allergies. Of course, in the kind of world of coronavirus, that's something that we want to be mindful of, kind of really anti-inflammatories, particularly focused on the respiratory system. Green tea and herbal teas, huge nutrient density there. So these are things that, again, they're dried. We can bring them in as kind of pantry staples. And water might get a little boring throughout the day. So bringing in some herbal teas, they don't have caffeine in them, which is great. So we can have them as part of our morning and evening routine to help us to kind of frame, when we're starting to go to sleep, when we're starting to kind of wake up. Green tea is incredibly nutrient dense as well. Actually has immune supportive ECGC in it, which is a compound in green tea. So these are things that we might be doing already, or it's like, oh, actually, like I love ginger tea or spearmint tea, or, get a variety pack of herbal teas and you might find one that you've never had before. But all of those have really incredible nutrients that are really being delivered to our body. Garlic, if we can eat it raw, it's absolutely amazing. So I don't expect you to take a big chunk out of, a whole bulb of garlic, but maybe you dice it up and add it into a salad dressing, or you put it into olive oil and you dip some of that crusty bread that everybody's baking into that olive oil with some raw garlic floating around in it. Cooked garlic is still going to give us abundance of nutrients as well, but from the immune function, raw is really going to be amazing. So ways that we can do that and kind of get creative with how we can deliver that. Honey and ginger added into some warm water, added into some of those wonderful herbal teas you're drinking, a lot of kind of coating that throat, anti-inflammatory properties, both really immune supportive and digestive supportive, which is wonderful. Turmeric, really beautiful orange spice. Curcumin is the main immune supporting anti-inflammatory nutrient in there. So that's kind of that, they're both the same. Turmeric contains curcumin. So this is a spice that we can cook with. It doesn't have a really tremendous taste to it. It does have a tremendous color, and it will stain anything white in your kitchen. So just FYI. But throwing it into smoothies, throwing it into stir fries, it is better absorbable when it's combined with pepper and when it's heated. You can take a supplement of curcumin as well, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. And my last food that I really want to highlight is fermented foods. And prebiotic foods. Prebiotic foods, really, we're talking about fruits and vegetables, in particular, the onions, the mushrooms, kind of potatoes, potato starch, rice would even fall into prebiotic foods, things that are going to feed your gut bacteria. So our gut bacteria are where a predominant amount of our immune system actually lives. And the balance of the good and the bad of those, that microbiome, which is what we would call kind of the whole population of bacteria in our digestive system, even though we have bacteria all over our bodies, we need to feed those. So that's the prebiotics, particularly from the fruits and the vegetables that we're eating. That's predominantly what they're going to eat. They also eat beans and nuts and seeds and things like that. Fermented foods are probiotic foods. So that's how we introduce the beneficial bacteria into the system. So we can think about things like kimchi and sauerkraut, things like tempeh, which is fermented soybeans kind of formed into a block. Really great protein source of food, actually a pretty great pantry staple. You could just simply dice it and roast it in the oven. I usually mix a little bit of kind of spices on top of it. Kids really love it because it has a little bit of like a chicken finger like texture to it, which I know sounds a little bizarre to compare to like a soy-based thing, but it's on the process scale, it's very unprocessed. So something that you might look to, definitely in that interesting, if you're in Whole Foods or something, it's in that kind of vegan area. So if you don't frequent there, maybe give it a glance over and see if you can find some tempeh. A great thing to kind of have on hand. Takes about 15 minutes to prepare. So these kind of fermented and prebiotic foods feeding that gut bacteria, but really all fruits and vegetables are going to be feeding that gut bacteria. 80% of our immune system lives and houses there. So that's a really quick rundown on some really major foods. Supplement wise, I actually put a link in. So I know that Workbar, you're going to share some of these resources. And so the link is to the Institute of Functional Medicine, which is a incredible kind of organizing body of functional medicine. A lot of kind of our leading functional medicine providers, medical doctors are the ones really leading this research. And they published the most kind of up-to-date in terms of nutraceuticals, so supplements and nutrients that are really going to support the health of our immune system to be robust in the time of coronavirus. And so these are really coming directly from there. Vitamin D is one of the number one. It really doesn't occur naturally in many foods, and we get it from the sunshine. Unfortunately, right now, there's not too much sunshine and the sun's a little further away from us. So a supplement for many of us might be really helpful in terms of that antiviral, kind of really closing the barrier of our gut, supporting our immune system in that way. Quercetin and curcumin, those major anti-inflammatories, zinc. These are a couple different forms of zinc that are most absorbable. So if you're looking for these in a kind of a supplement form, the dosage and the frequency, I'm going to let you look at the IFM resources for those, because they give some of the potential interactions with medications. They do give the specific exact dosages if you are looking for those, but though you'll kind of get the greater context of maybe where or why you would be using those. So a little bit more than what we could talk about in 20 minutes. NAC is actually supportive of our body's number one antioxidant called glutathione. NAC is basically a delivery form for cysteine, which is an amino acid. Now, we can certainly take a supplement of this, but if we eat any forms of concentrated proteins like animal proteins, even plant-based proteins, those are delivering cysteine, which is really what we're looking for. So we can certainly take a supplement of these, but amazingly enough, there's a huge category of protein foods that will deliver these. So that's why proteins are really important during this time as well. And elderberry, I think I hear a lot of my clients talking about elderberry. That one is absolutely supportive to the immune system. No, there was a little, for anyone that maybe saw it, was a little bit of pushback on elderberry at some point at the beginning of this, when this all went down, but really elderberry is a wonderful form of naturally occurring vitamin C, really supportive of the immune system, particularly with antiviral activities. We do want to think about how we eat as well, really trying to have meals versus just kind of grazing throughout the day. Digestion is really energy demanding in our body, and so we want to help our body to kind of target energy for digestion in very finite periods of time. So we have kind of meals and snacks and kind of with periods of time in between that maybe we drink our herbal teas or we have water, eat when we're hungry, but try to refrain from just eating and grazing all day long. Not only it's very confusing to when we are actually hungry and feeling satisfied, but it's a lot of energy for our body to just continuously digest for, extended periods of time. So we want our body to be able to put energy to other places, like recharging the immune system and kind of having that offense really ready and primed to go. Are we mindful or distracted when we're eating? Are we watching the news? Are we checking emails? That's definitely a slippery slope when we're working from home. So, being mindful of what that environment is. A balanced plate, protein, healthy fat. I said protein twice. So protein, healthy fat, and a fruit or vegetable was what that was supposed to say, a fiber source. So protein, healthy fat, and fiber source. That's really to have kind of this balance. And as we do want to limit refined added sugars, they are a bit taxing to the immune system. Of course, really aiming for the robust amount of our foods to be these real single ingredient whole foods as we talked about. And then of course, some, sweets and joy that gets filled in. So I usually say try to be 80% of these nutrient dense foundational foods, protein, healthy fats, fiber from fruits and vegetables. And then 20% of, a week, if we were to kind of dice it out, that's our joy. And if that joy is going to be cupcakes and donuts and wine, then that's a wonderful thing to fill with that 20%. So we really want to think about this balance. So that kind of takes us into, into the idea of kind of creating a schedule. So we want to mark our calendar for our personal activities, really actually add things into our calendar to really carve out when are we going to do these things, because a lot of our day-to-day is really defined by us now. A lot of that, I think, how are we starting and ending our day? Building something to frame your day so that we can really help ourselves to mentally and physically start and end our day. And that makes so the middle of the day, we're able to maybe like get out of our own way a little bit more because we've had these really thoughtful moments. And I like there to be 3 M's in your morning and evening routine: some movement, some mindfulness, and a mindset. So movement, it could be all 3 of these M's could happen in 5 minutes. You could do 1.5 minutes of stretches when you wake up or when you're starting to think about, transitioning to bed in this kind of routine. You could do 1.5 minutes of deep breathing exercises. There's wonderful breathing exercises called, the name of which is just totally flown out of my mind, but it's 4 seconds inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, 4-second hold. Box breathing. There we go. So box breathing is really supported in research to help to switch our nervous system from our busy fight or flight, which is kind of the stressful, into our rest and digest, helping us to kind of fall asleep, to kind of wake up calm, and really framing our day helps us to kind of pull that calm, that mindfulness, a little bit of that kind of circulation that we've started into the greater chunk of our day. And our mindset. So how I like to do this is, you could have a mantra for yourself, even just repeating, I am happy, I am stress-free, a number of times. You could read a page of an inspirational book. You could listen to 1.5 minutes of a podcast that you really enjoy and connect with. You could just open a door or a window and stand outside and breathe a couple things of fresh air and think about one thing that you're grateful for. So it doesn't have to be any longer than 5 minutes. I know I threw a couple 1.5 minutes out there, and I don't know if that added up to 5, but you get the gist. It doesn't have to be this 30-minute overwhelming activity. Now, if you have 30 minutes and you want to go for a walk in the morning, that is beautiful. So having movement be as part of this. So part of our morning routine, midday or at the hour mark, can be really helpful. And again, it doesn't have to be long. So even every hour mark, you could decide, all right, every hour I'm going to do a set of 10 of something. I'm going to do 10 lunges. I'm going to do 10 jumping jacks. I'm going to do 10 push-ups, or, just throwing random things out there, but 10 things of movement every hour. And by the end of the day, you've actually built up a pretty good amount of movement. And then maybe you do some of that gentle movement in the evening, because movement actually helps us to really digest our stress hormone and helps us to really support our immune function as well. And stress and immune have a lot to do with one another, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. How are we sleeping? Probably not as great as we have been. I'm going to just make a generalization there. I think every single one of my clients is finding it a little harder to have these sound sleep that maybe we did, prior, because there's a lot on our mind. So those morning and night routines can really help to set up how we are going to be restful throughout the day, particularly that movement. The earlier we do movement, particularly if we're doing more moderate to intense movement, if we move that to earlier in the day, that actually better helps sleep. If we're doing more moderate or intense movement in the evening, sometimes that can be detrimental to really sound sleep. So just reflecting on yourself, if that's something that you're kind of experimenting with, what's the best time of day for you to do your more moderate, intense exercise if you're doing that. If you're just going for walks and doing some stretching or yoga or even like a Pilates or something like that, you could do that any time of day. It's not too invigorating. Certainly wonderful forms of movement, but in terms of impacting of sleep. Our best sleep is really happening between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. It is so easy to let ourselves slip into like going down the rabbit hole of reading things on our phones or being, more engaged in all of this that's going on around us. And all of a sudden it's midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. So really trying to hone in on going to bed and waking up generally around the same time. That's really the best way that our body finds sleep and support. Light exposure is another. Are we falling asleep with our phone in our face? Totally guilty of that too, but I do try to be mindful of it. And if we can disconnect for about an hour before we're starting our kind of descent into sleep, that's really predominantly going to happen to help to support the production of melatonin, which is the hormone that helps us to fall asleep. Melatonin, interestingly enough, has a huge amount of immune supportive properties. And the Institute of Functional Medicine actually has it as a potential supplement that we can take. That certainly will help us to fall asleep if we're challenged by it. But really the first thing before we turn to supplements, we want to say, what am I doing from a lifestyle standpoint? Because that's not going to cost me anything. That's just going to be, something that I can do right now tonight. So really carving out, what is my bedtime routine? I put another link here. The Institute of Functional Medicine has some really great guidelines around sleep that go a little bit deeper. They call it sleep hygiene, really how we're setting ourselves up for optimal sleep. So that would be a great resource to kind of push out into the community. Scheduling in your hydration and your meals. I definitely sometimes have clients do this if they, I think in this state when some of us might be forgetting to eat because we're busy or stressed. Some of us might be, not able to schedule those meals as great, and even the hydration. So having little alarms in your calendar or phone can really help us to optimize meals and hydration. And then stress management and mindful practices. So I like to call this finding balance. Our chronic stress, when we have an elevated cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So when we have kind of this psycho-emotional stress, we might have some physical stress too. Maybe there's, an injury, or maybe we're not eating enough because we're really stressed. That can definitely happen. Any types of there's a lot of physical stress as well as mental, emotional stress that can kind of cause this. But that rise in cortisol for a longer period of time actually impedes immune function. And it's a protective, natural thing that's supposed to happen in our bodies. If we're running from a tiger in that fight or flight, way back when we ran from tigers, it wouldn't be an optimal time to get sick. So that's really why that's built into our body. It's not our body being mean or bad or dumb. It's our body being brilliant. But nowadays, we're not running from tigers. We're sitting in front of our computer. We're watching the news. We're getting emails. We're, having challenges in our lives. And so that tiger is perpetually chasing us, which is impacting our immune system. And so the best thing that we can do to support our immune system from the stress management piece is really build in stress and mindfulness practices. Only check the news once a day, no longer than 30 minutes. Nothing is going to change that drastically in 24 hours, or you will be notified. I promise you, someone is going to text you if something drastic really happens. Trying to avoid checking your phone for a period of time in the morning or in the night. I think both really would be the most beneficial. Sometimes I do find some of my clients, especially some of my clients that have some really important things that, they wake up and they're like, if I just check my email really quick to see if any fires happened, then I can actually have a morning routine that feels much more calm because I know that there's nothing scary and huge waiting for me in my email. That might be a practice that you adopt of saying, okay, quick glance, okay, nothing that I have to, really use the fire extinguisher here, then okay, now I can do my 5 minutes, my 10 minutes, my 30-minute walk, whatever it is. So build it so that it actually fits your lifestyle. Practicing calming activities. I know these sometimes are kind of like, oh yeah, those, I'll do some deep breathing, that'll help. I'll do some meditation, that'll help. Really, the more that we practice these and the more that we get into the routine, it really helps to transition our nervous system from that fight or flight running from the tiger to rest and digest. So that's actually digestion that happens in the rest and digest. So if we can do 5 rounds of that box breathing that I mentioned, that 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, 4-second hold, to transition into that rest and digest before meals, we're actually going to digest our food more efficiently, therefore supporting our immune system more efficiently and reducing stress. And we've just got everything swimming together now. Practicing gratitude, that kind of mindset. This works for some people, it doesn't for others, but usually when we first start out, we might feel a little corny or cheesy and you're like, oh, I'm grateful for the roof over my head and the clothes on my back. But if we can get more specific and really think about the things that, we are grateful for, certainly roof over our head and clothes on our back. I don't mean to diminish those, but in terms of things that really connect with us that we are so grateful for, particularly in this unique time, when it's sometimes hard to find those things, it can help us to just have a little shift in perspective and make everything feel a little bit lighter. Exercise we really talked about in terms of really being predominantly incredibly supportive of our immune system. but really, really supportive of actually helping us to metabolize those stress hormones, that cortisol, and helping us to really change the structure in our mind. And I totally took this from somebody on Instagram the other day, but when I read this, I automatically, my shoulders kind of came away from my ears, and I just felt so much, it made so much sense to me, just to remember that we're not just working from home. We are at home during a crisis trying to work. And so if things feel different, or if we feel preoccupied and we can't quite get that focus, or, you know, all of these things feel a lot heavier and harder than they did maybe pre the situation that we're in, helping to remind ourselves that this is a really unique situation that none of us have ever been into before, and we're just doing the best that we can. And if we can choose one thing to do, one thing that may be connected with us today, do that. And that is a tremendous amount of steps forward to supporting our health.
Awesome. Abby, thank you so much. That was amazing. I learned so much myself just from a couple of slides, so thank you. I encourage everyone, if you have any questions, to submit them in the Q&A box or in the chat. I do have a few. So can you talked about mindset, which was amazing, but could you talk about a little bit what you tell your clients on staying motivated to kind of keep these 3 M's in place? I think that is something that a lot of people are struggling with too, is just the 3 M's are amazing. And yes, they're so wonderful, but really honing in on the mindset to stay motivated, I think, is where people might be struggling.
Yeah. Yes. I find that, you know, getting started can sometimes be the biggest barrier, because oftentimes I find that, myself included, and my clients think, well, I have to go for a 30-minute walk, or I need to do an hour exercise, or I need to do, you know, all of these things, and I have to do them for X amount of time, or I have to do them for X amount of days. Or we have this wonderful intention of setting these goals. And I think goals are wonderful, but sometimes those goals can be the impedance of that motivation, because, God, wow, that 30-minute walk feels so hard and so long. And, oh, is it going to rain? And it's a little cold out, or, you know, we can come up with all of these excuses. So just getting out the door and saying, you know what, I'm going to start walking for 2 minutes or 5 minutes. And if at the end of that 2 minutes or that 5 minutes, I don't feel like walking anymore, I'm going to turn it back around and I'm going to go home. And I'm going to at least have gotten, probably by that point, either 5 minutes or 10 minutes of a walk in. And probably by the time I'm out there, you're like, oh, this fresh air feels nice. Oh, these birds are kind of lovely. Like, oh, look, there's other people doing this too. Okay, all right, I could walk a block further. I could do, so just that kind of movement forward, certainly with exercise, you know, kind of getting going and knowing that, you know, we don't have to do the 30 minutes or the hour or the heavy intense. Just do one small step towards whatever that goal is to kind of get us to get going. And I think if we can set up a, you know, maybe someone in our household wants to join in on our movement goals, or one of the goals that we have, kind of getting accountability partners in on that, that'll kind of keep us both motivated. Even if it's you FaceTime with, you know, one of your family members or a friend, and you say, all right, I'm going to go for a walk at 7 a.m. every morning. And you are, and, you know, we make the pact that we both will, and then we'll FaceTime one another at the same time. So we don't physically have to be together to have these accountability partners. Or, you know, there are a lot of, I mean, my Pilates studio has transitioned to Zoom workouts. And so I meet my Pilates instructor with a group exercise, you know, every morning, and they, you know, still get after me if I miss it. So, you know, just that accountability piece can be really helpful, because it feels hard to connect these days.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Me and my sister started a coronavirus cardio club text message, and we take pictures of ourselves after whatever workout we did that day. And even just telling them, okay, I went on a walk instead of doing this, but still having that, you know, forum to put it in has been really motivating and helping, like, through this time. Susanna would like to know, well, she says this was brilliant. Thank you.
Great.
What's your view on veganism? She switched to whole food plant-based diet in the fall and feels way better, but friends still give her some pushback. No, and she says, I know about supplements like B12.
Yeah. So I think the gold standard is always, how do you feel? And, really thinking about that in terms of letting go of any of the kind of our own, what we think we should feel. Sometimes we do these changes to like veganism, which is pretty drastic in terms of the changes in proteins that we're consuming, really only consuming plant-based proteins. And some of our bodies are really well adapt at digesting and absorbing the plant nutrients from those. And some of our bodies are not as efficient. And that's really comes down to kind of genetics, that comes down to our digestive kind of, robust digestion, I guess I would say. So that reflection of, okay, how do I really feel? And as you maybe kind of continue longer on this, you might find, wow, I'm really still feeling amazing. My energy, we think about, are we getting colds frequently? Are we having aches and pains? Are we having, any type of symptom of little like white, like red flag or white flag, I guess, really not that big, but, anything that's like, eek, like, oh, this is a new thing. This doesn't feel so great. And then it might simply be like, okay, well, maybe if this doesn't feel so great, what if I just brought eggs in twice a week? Maybe that would be the only amount that I need to kind of, so everyone's body is so unique. And so I really don't subscribe to a diet at any point, because it's really reflecting on, well, how does this make me feel, and feel for the long term too. And really taking away the judgment of, sometimes we're like, oh, I'm so proud of myself for making this change, and now I'm vegan, and the title means so much more to me than my health does. So sometimes it's that big goal that we've set that we're like, I'm going to achieve that goal, whether it kills me or not. And you're like, well, I thought that goal was about your health. So if it kills you, I don't think, and not, of course, veganism is not going to kill you, but just being a little funny about that in terms of like, okay, the big thing is really, I'm doing this for my health. So how am I truly feeling with this? And then softening a little bit of saying, okay, do I need to find a middle ground? And some people might need to find a middle ground, and some people might totally thrive on the way that they're eating. Just really, recognizing that we're limiting some of the proteins. So that would be the main kind of focus for you of, where am I getting those protein foods from?
Okay, awesome. And since we're on the topic of food, you mentioned a lot of wonderful things for us to put into our diets. Mm-hmm. I guess you mentioned donuts, but is there anything that you, or any food group, I guess, that you should say, like, probably best to steer away from during this time in, to benefit your immune health?
So I always think of food as a team. And when I mentioned that kind of balanced plate, I've talked about it quite quickly, but really thinking of our balanced blood sugar. And that's really something that I want, all people to be thinking of, all ages, even my, young students, to certainly someone that has blood sugar issues, prediabetes, diabetes, whatnot. We all should be thinking about it. And how we really think about that is, okay, food works as a team. So that's where, when we bring in a protein, when we bring in a healthy fat like an avocado or an olive oil in our salad dressing, when we bring in a fiber from a fruit or a vegetable onto our plate, those three categories of foods have now helped to balance our blood sugar. So if that, French fries or baked potato or, carbohydrate bread, whatever it is, wanders into our plate too, well, it's not going to be that big of an impact on our blood sugar, because we already brought its teammates in that are really wonderful at helping to balance that blood sugar. So really thinking of, so I more try to educate of saying, not so much of, eek, no, not having things, but okay, do we need to bring something else into this meal to really get that balanced blood sugar? I don't really find that the mindset of kind of avoiding is terribly helpful, particularly during a time like this. We certainly don't want to be more stressful about food, but the idea of, okay, do I have a healthy fat? Do I have a protein? Do I have fiber from a fruit or vegetable? And if all those guys are there, then, we think about like avocado toast with a fried egg. You've got your carbohydrate from your toast, you've got your healthy fat from your avocado, and then you've got your protein from your egg, and actually healthy fat because the yolk is the healthy fat too. And then maybe we throw some like arugula on top or some sliced tomatoes or something like that. That's a balanced plate right there. And it's pretty darn good too.
Okay, well, I think those were most of my questions, because the other ones I had, you answered throughout the well thought out presentation. So I guess just to wrap up, and if anybody has any other questions, please shoot them in now. what are kind of the biggest takeaways from your presentation here, if you had to just kind of narrow it down?
Yeah, the 3 M's are something I connect with hugely, particularly during this time. Really thinking of how am I moving? And it doesn't have to be this exercise mentality. That's really why I like to refer to it as movement. It could simply be stretching, more circulation. I know a lot of us feel more achy than we typically do because we don't have this built-in movement. We're actually leaving our homes and just, walking out the door to our car. We're not even doing that these days. So that kind of the movement piece, where are we building that into our day? The mindfulness piece, how and where are we building that in? Is it, coloring in terms of, adult coloring books, even coloring with our kids could be lovely. Is it connecting with others? How are we practicing that mindfulness? And how are we setting up for our kind of that motivation that we were talking about, that kind of mantra, that mindset? How is that kind of coming into our day, particularly in this really unique and challenging time, for nothing more than just all of the, you can kind of feel it in the air. And so really helping us to be kind of more resilient through those 3 things. And that doesn't even involve what's on our plate actually at this moment. And I think that's really where a lot of us can put some more effort into, or some more awareness, rather, not much effort, but awareness.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been very informative and just excellent. So I will, to all our viewers, I will be sending out a survey email, and I will include in that the links that Abby provided, and also the best contact information in case you want to reach out to her directly. And next week is going to be finance week. So we're switching gears from wellness to finance. So make sure you tune in to see, what we're presenting next week and everything. But Abby, thank you so much again. This has been absolutely wonderful. And hopefully we can have you back on a different topic at another time.
Love that. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.